The Tiananmen Square Protests of 1989 were a pivotal moment in Chinese history, characterized by widespread demonstrations advocating for political reform, freedom of speech, and other democratic rights. Here's an overview of the events surrounding the protests, their causes, and their aftermath. Background: the impacts of the Cultural Revolution from 1966 to 1976 left deep scars on Chinese society. In the late 1970s, Deng Xiaoping initiated economic reforms, transitioning China from a planned economy to a more market-oriented one. Rapid economic changes led to social disparities, inflation, and corruption, causing discontent among the populace. Beginning of the protests. The death of Hu Yaobang, a reformist leader, in April 1989 catalyzed public mourning and protests. University students in Beijing organized demonstrations in Tiananmen Square, calling for political reform and freedom of expression. Over the following weeks, thousands joined the protests, expanding beyond students to include workers and intellectuals. Key events. In mid-May, students began hunger strikes to draw attention to their demands. The protests gained immense public support, with many citizens bringing food and supplies to demonstrators. The Chinese government initially responded with limited force, but tensions escalated. On May 20, 1989, the government declared martial law in response to the protests. On June 3rd and 4th, the military was ordered to clear the square, resulting in significant violence. Troops advanced on Tiananmen Square, using tanks and live ammunition against unarmed civilians. The massacre. Estimates of casualties vary widely, with figures ranging from hundreds to thousands. The brutal crackdown shocked the world, leading to widespread condemnation. International media broadcasted images of the violence, further fueling global outrage. Aftermath. The Chinese government imposed strict censorship to suppress discussion about the events. Many protesters were arrested, and others faced severe consequences for their activism. Despite the crackdown, China continued with economic reforms, leading to rapid growth in the 1990s. Legacy. Tiananmen Square became a symbol of the struggle for democracy in China. Annual vigils are held in various parts of the world, particularly in Hong Kong until recent years, to honor the victims. The events influenced art, literature, and academic discourse both in China and abroad. Conclusion. The legacy of Tiananmen Square remains relevant as discussions about human rights and governance continue in China. The events inspired generations of activists seeking political reform and justice. The crackdown affected China's foreign relations, leading to sanctions and increased scrutiny from Western nations. The Tiananmen Square protests and their violent suppression mark a significant chapter in China's modern history, encapsulating the tensions between authoritarianism and the yearning for democratic freedom.